Yeah, morning everyone.
Morning, sir.
Hi Pavani. Last class also same members, 17 members around.
Sir, last class, fear I am action stats, sir. I don't know how many are present.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. No problem. Let's wait for 2 minutes more. Yeah, okay. Let's start the class. Morning everybody. Yeah, yesterday we have seen how to extract the oil from the oil.
Good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Okay, yesterday we have seen about how to extract the oil from the oil seeds. So there are two methods for extraction of oil from the oil seeds. One is mechanical method, and next one is solvent extraction method. So in the mechanical extraction method, there are further two presses are available. So one is the continuous screw extruder, or expeller we call. Then next one is batch hydraulic press. So the raw materials we have seen yesterday were the complete flow sheet. This one was the complete flow sheet. Okay, today you will just watch the video regarding this, how to extract the oil. This is an animated video. The whole flow sheet, whole process flow sheet has been shown in this one. Just watch this.
Oil extraction methods. Following flow sheets shows the process.
Whether you are receiving audio or not, can anybody confirm?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Very
sir.
well,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Audio is coming, sir. Audio, video, both coming.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes.
Vegetable oil extraction methods. following flow sheets shows the process of vegetable oil extraction by two methods, mechanical and solvent extraction. You see, at the starting of the process with mechanical process, first seeds are introduced and they are cleaned and dehulled by physical method. After cleaning and removal of hull is sent for size reduction, that is, crushing rolls, solids, and here they are converted into flakes. Flakes from the size cracking rolls are sent into mechanical expeller, that is, digester. Here, steam is cooked and flakes gets more susceptible, that is, affected to release oil at 104 to 121 degrees centigrade. Then it is sending to screw expeller. In this expeller, solid and liquid get separated from the cooked flakes and separate oil. Simultaneously, flakes are also introduced in solvent extraction process. In solvent extraction process, flakes are introduced in extractor and solvent are sprayed on the flakes at required amount. Then wet meal is passed to a desolventizer. In desolventizer, wet meal is separated from the solvent. From extractor, impure oil with water, solvent is passing to film evaporator. In evaporator, it separates oil from water and solvent. Then it goes to vacuum stripper where it again separates the oil from solvent, which comes in a minute quantity by adding steam. In purification process, oil comes from expeller and solvent extractor is introduced in mixer settler alkylation. Here, alkali is used as sodium hydroxide to remove the fatty acids, and then it is centrifuged to remove the fatty acids. Then it is passing to fuller earth carbon adsorber. Here it is used to remove the color and some solid particles. At last, it is sent to a rotary drum. It separates oil from waste solids.
Okay, that's a video on how to extract the oil. In the next process, we will go for hydrogenation of oil. Hope you understood that one in the last video. The last class also we have seen that vegetable oil extraction through a normal flow sheet from the textbook, and now we have watched the animated video. Yeah. Next topic in this unit 2 is part A of unit 2 is hydrogenation of oil. Okay, this is also known as a hardening of oil, nothing but a conversion of liquid to solid. Okay, conversion of liquid oil to the solid fat. Okay, it is a unit process in which the user in the oil and fat industry to remove double bonds, which is also known as which is also characterized. Double bond is also characteristics of a unsaturated fatty acids. So these unsaturated fatty acids are converted to saturated fatty acids. The characteristics of this saturated fatty acids is single bond, presence of a single bond. So in doing so, its rising melting point will be raised, and its rancid resistance to rancid oxidation is also reduced. So rancidity is, yesterday we discussed what is rancidity. Rancidity is nothing but partial or complete or incomplete oxidation or hydrolysis of a triglycerides. Okay, is known as rancidity. So oxidation will take place, or the hydrolysis will break down the triglyceride molecules to the respective free fatty acid contents, and aldehydes and ketones are produced, which are responsible for the off flavors or some unpleasant odors in the oils. So in order to stop this rancid behavior, we have to go for the hydrogenation of oil. So hydrogenation of oil is nothing but a conversion of unsaturated fatty acids to the saturated fatty acids. In other words, we can say that removal of double bond. Okay, when we are doing so, we can rise the melting point of a oil, then we can increase its resistance to rancid oxidation. Then what are the raw materials required for this hydrogenation of oil? Obviously oil is required for this hydrogenation process. The next one, purified hydrogen is required as a raw material in order to add the hydrogen to the oil. Then bleaching agents or adsorbents like Fuller tail. Yeah, the oils will will have a many off colors or a many uncertain colors. Okay, so in order to remove those colors, we have to decolorize those oil. We have to use Fuller's earth as a filtration aid and carbon as a adsorbent. Then if required, some vitamins are added to the respective oils. Then the end products of this hydrogenation or hardening of oil is vanaspati. Okay, dalda something we use in a household cooking purpose. Dalda, vanaspati, these are the names the dalda is known as. Then vegetable ghee can be prepared using this hydrogenation of oil. Then hardened industrial oils can also be prepared in order to increase their shelf life, storage life. So partially hydrogenated liquid oils can also be prepared. These are the various end products for the hydrogenation process. Next one, these are the reactions which will take place. The overall reaction will be this is the fatty acid chain and this is glycerol backbone. R2 is glycerol backbone and R1 is fatty acid chain, including this R1C double bond C of X molecules. So X is the stoichiometric coefficient. So Y molecules of hydrogen will be added to this triglyceride molecule in presence of a nickel activated nickel catalyst. Then it will be converted to Y molecules of some triglycerides. Okay, included Y is nothing but an indication of how many number of hydrogen is added. So for example, you can take the linoleic acid here. This is the linoleic acid triglyceride. Overall C17H31COO thrice C3H5 is a linoleic acid triglyceride. Okay, when we add three molecules of hydrogen to it in presence of a activated nickel catalyst, we will obtain the hydrogenated or a hydrogenated solidified linoleic triglyceride. So this is the overall hydrogenation process or a hardening process. Okay, how to synthesize the nickel catalyst? Okay, there are three processes in order to synthesize the nickel catalyst. The first one among is the nickel formate decomposition. So nickel formate will be there, NiHCOO twice 2H2O. This is the nickel formate. When this nickel formate is combined in a oil base and heated at 190 degrees centigrade, it will liberate Ni activated nickel catalyst with the liberation of carbon dioxide, hydrogen and water. So this activated nickel catalyst can be used as a catalyst in this overall hydrogenation reaction. Okay, the other process to prepare the nickel catalyst is the reduced Ni on inert catalyst support. So nickel hydroxide will be there. In this nickel hydroxide, we will add a hydrogen. Then hydrogenation of this nickel hydroxide will give you activated nickel catalyst with liberation of a water. Then nickel carbonate can also be used as a source of activated nickel, in which it is hydrogenated to give nickel activated nickel catalyst along with liberation of water and carbon dioxide. Then another popular method for the nickel catalyst preparation is the Rani or spongy nickel method. Okay, this is popularly used in every hydrogenation industry or oil and fat industry because the Rani nickel or a spongy nickel will have a high surface area. Okay, it will be associated with high porous structure and high surface area. That's why it is called as spongy nickel. Okay, so in order to do so, the alloy of aluminum and nickel is used. Okay, it is reduced using a alkali, NaOH, sodium hydroxide, in which it will produce a Rani nickel, activated nickel catalyst, when sodium aluminate is just washed off with water. Then the activated or a Rani nickel can be prepared. This Rani nickel will have a high surface area and a large porous structure. Therefore, it can be used to carry out the hydrogenation process. Okay, among all these three methods, Rani nickel or a spongy nickel method is very much advantageous because of its high surface area. As you can see in this picture, this is a typical picture of a Rani nickel. It will be in a white color powder. Okay, in some parts it will be a gray color also. Then this is the overall flow sheet in which hydrogenation is carried out. So first one, oil will be charged into the hydrogenator. This is the hydrogenator. in which the oil and nickel catalyst slurry will be mixed in separate tank. It will be transferred to the hydrogenator. As soon as the purified hydrogen enters the hydrogenator, uh, okay, before starting the reaction with the hydrogen after charging the oil will be heated off with the steam or some hot water, so as to remove the water inside the oil or to drive off the air inside the oil. Okay, then the oil and catalyst slurry will be charged into the reactor. As soon as oil and nickel catalyst slurry is charged and hydrogen is charged inside the hydrogenator, the steam heating will be stopped, because hydrogenation reaction is a slightly exothermic reaction. In order to do so, because to stop this wide temperature variations, we will stop the steam heating as soon as the hydrogen enters into the reaction system. Then after completion of a hydrogenation process, so how can we identify the completion of hydrogenation process? At each interval of time, we will collect a oil sample and we will analyze the iodine number of the respective oil. So, okay, iodine number is nothing but amount of iodine consumed per gram of oil. So iodine value will be estimated at each interval of time. Then with the iodine value is indication of presence of number of double bonds. So as soon as we reach the desired iodine value, or a desired hydrogenation process, the reaction will be stopped and the whole batch will be collected into the cooler. Then it will be cooled off and filtered. And after filtration, the obtained solids, which is nothing but a nickel catalyst, will be recycled back to the tank, in which it will be mixed with some oil and then fed back to the reactor or hydrogenator. Then whatever the liquid phase the oil will be obtained will be sent to the vacuum steam deodorizer, in which the off flavors which are produced during the hydrogenation process, in the conversion of unsaturated to saturated process, will be deodorized using the steam. So this is called a Doudham heater or a Doudham vacuum steam deodorizer. Okay, so after passing to this vacuum deodorizer, it will be passed through the filter or adsorbent to decolorize the coloring components which are obtained during the hydrogenation process using a fuller earth carbon. Okay, these are the adsorbents and the filter aid. Fuller's earth is the filter aid and carbon is a adsorbent in order to remove the coloring components. Then after that, it will be filtered out whatever the waste solids are nothing but this Fuller's earth carbon will be removed, and the purified oil or a hydrogenated oil will be collected. So this is known as a vanaspati or a partially hydrogenated oil or a hardened oil, you can say. So this is the overall hydrogenation process. Okay, in this one, the major engineering problems will be particularly two types of major engineering problems we can encounter. First one among this is the thermodynamic and kinetic problem. Okay, thermodynamically, as you can see from this reaction, from this graph, the delta H is getting negative. So this is a slightly exothermic reaction, though it is very small. Delta H is 1 kilocalories per gram atom. So slightly, it is categorized as a slightly exothermic reaction. So water coolant or a water coolant is needed inside the hydrogenator in order to keep the temperature, in order to keep our temperature near to our desired value of below 200 degrees centigrade, we say. So then water coolant has to be used in order to control this slightly exothermic reaction. Then temperature must be kept below 200 degrees centigrade in order to avoid the side reactions like one of the side reactions is pyrolysis or degradation of oils above 200 degrees centigrade. Because when oil is heated above 200 degrees centigrade, the degradation will be possible, because triglycerides will break to the respective free fatty acids. Then sintering will happen. Sintering is nothing but a destruction of a pore structure of a catalyst. The pore structure of the catalyst will be destructed. The pore structure inside the catalyst will be destructed. That is nothing but a sintering of a porous catalyst. Then in order to avoid these two reactions like a pyrolysis of oil and sintering of the porous catalyst, we need to keep our temperature below 200 degrees centigrade. Then the kinetic parameters. The kinetic parameters, as you can see from this figure, okay, there are 8 steps there are 8 resistances for the reactions to be carried out. These reaction resistance steps can be encountered in any typical heterogeneous catalysis reactions. First, see, hydrogen will be in a gas phase. Okay, oil will be in a liquid phase. So this oil phase needs to be transferred inside the surface of the catalyst. First pore will be there on the surface of the catalyst. Through the pore, this liquid oil needs to pass. So first resistance needs to be crossed is the porous structure, porous diffusion of the catalyst, diffusion of the oil towards the catalyst surface. Then the next is the hydrogenation. Hydrogen will be there in the gaseous form. So this gaseous hydrogen will need to combine in a solution form. So this will be a first resistance for the hydrogen diffusion. Then this combined solution form will be diffused into the catalyst surface. So this will be a second resistance. Then the third resistance will be a chemisorption on catalyst surface. So therefore the reaction to happen, whatever the hydrogen will be there, the second molecule, nothing but the reaction is carried out in such a way that oil plus hydrogen will give rise to fat. So hydrogen being in a gaseous phase, this needs to be chemisorbed or adsorbed on the surface of the catalyst, inside surface, nothing but a active site of the catalyst. When this hydrogen is adsorbed on the active sites of the catalyst, it will offer some resistance. This is known as third resistance. And the fourth one is the oil is just diffused into the catalyst surface. So this will be a fourth resistance. Then this oil, when diffused inside, it will not remain as a diffused state. It will just chemisorb on the active side of the catalyst. So in order to chemisorb or adsorb on the active side, it will offer one resistance. It is categorized as fifth resistance. Then after all the reactant, the two reactants will be adsorbed on the catalyst active site. Then a reaction will take place, which will act as a sixth resistance. Then after the sixth resistance, the surface reaction will take place in the sixth resistance. Then this surface reactions will give you a product fat. Okay, oil plus hydrogen will give rise to fat. Then this fat in the form of a liquid will just come outside of the catalyst surface, though that is known as a desorption. The opposite of the adsorption is called a desorption. So here when chemisorption is taking place, it will just stick to the catalyst surface. When desorption is taking place, the product will just release from the catalyst surface. Then afterwards, whatever the product is just dissolved to the outside of the catalyst will come to the bulk phase. Okay, bulk phase of the product. So this is called a diffusion. So this all the 8 barriers, these molecules of H2 and oil needs to be crossed all these 8 barriers. Okay, so this is the overall kinetic rate control. So in order to control these resistances, so our when we are operating our hydrogenation process below 200 degrees centigrades, the variation in mechanism, the variation in a rate controlling step is possible, because the first, when the hydrogenation is operated at 100 degrees centigrades, the rate controlling step will be adsorption. Okay, surface reaction and adsorption, these two steps. See, this chemisorption on catalyst and this chemisorption on catalyst and this surface reaction on catalyst. Resistance 3, 5 and 6 will be the rate controlling steps when we operate our reaction below hydrogenator below 100 degrees centigrades. Then the next rate will be possible. In order to increase the rate, the hydrogen pressure could be increased above atmospheric pressure up to the maximum of 7 atmospheric gauge. We can increase the hydrogenation pressure in order to increase the rates of a reaction. Then the next one, see the mechanism how it is changing. So the initial control steps, when the reaction temperature is at the vicinity of 100 degrees centigrades, the resistances 3, 5 and 6 are the rate controlling steps. Whereas when we are going beyond 180 degrees centigrades, the rate controlling steps are nothing but a diffusion. See this diffusion on catalyst and diffusion on catalyst here, 2, 4 and or the mass transfer, this desorption also here, there is this diffusion. So 2, 4, 7, 8 are the rate controlling steps when the reaction is carried out at around 180 degrees centigrades. Okay, the first major engineering problem is the thermodynamic and kinetic problem, in which thermodynamically the reaction is slightly exothermic. Therefore, in order to control that slightly exothermic reaction, we need to maintain our maintain some cooling water circulation inside the hydrogenator. Then the next one is operating temperature. So operating temperature of hydrogenator will be below 200 degrees centigrade in order to avoid the side reactions. The first side reaction is the pyrolysis or degradation of the oil triglycerides. So in order to stop, so we have to do the reaction below 200 degrees centigrade. The next one is sintering of the porous catalyst. The pores will be destroyed and the surface area will be reduced. That is nothing but a sintering process. In order to avoid this sintering process and pyrolysis of oil, the reaction or hydrogenation needs to be carried out below 200 degrees centigrade. Then the next one is the kinetic rate factors. There are 6 type of barriers in order to carry out this reaction, hydrogenation reaction. Out of these 8 reactions, when the reaction temperature is varying or a hydrogenation temperature is varying, the reaction mechanism or a reaction rate controlling will be different. Initially, when the reaction is about 200 degrees centigrade, the rate controlling steps will be the chemisorption or adsorption adsorption on the catalyst surface. Okay, 3, 5, and 6, and surface reaction. Whereas when reaction temperature is reaching towards 180 degrees centigrade, the diffusion 2 and diffusion 4 and desorption 7 and desorption 8 or the diffusion 8 or the rate controlling steps when the reaction temperature is around 180 degrees centigrade. Then the next one major engineering problem is the hydrogen handling problem. Therefore, we already know, we have seen in the first unit in which nuclear materials and propulsion materials, hydrogen is a highly explosive material. It will have a wide explosive limit between 4.1 to 74.2 percentage. Then all the equipments, in order to suppress this explosive limit, all the equipment should be leak tested. Okay, therefore we should ensure that there should not be any water content or air content inside the our reaction system. Before charging any of the reactant into our hydrogenator, we need to ensure that there is no other air present, oxidation is present, or oxygen is present inside it. In order to ensure so, we have to test this with the freon or helium detectors. Okay, we need to just impinge the freon inert gas inside that hydrogenated reactor. Then we already seen in the first unit, hydrogen will cause a highly will just impinge into the lattice structure of the steel or a carbon material. Then when this impinges, it will produce a hydrogen embrittlement. Embrittlement is nothing but lattice structure breaking. It will just accidentally break the lattice structure inside the reactor or a hydrogenator material. So high quality carbon steel have to be used in the hydrogenation process. So these are the overall major engineering problems. Okay, hope you understood this one. Any doubts? Anybody is having any doubt, or shall I continue?
No, sir, you can.
Okay, then shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, just watch a video for the hydrogenation. It is a laboratory technique, since hydrogenation is carried out maximum in a batch reactors only because of low production quantity, and also because of advantages in the batch reaction in handling a highly explosive reactant like hydrogen. So you can watch a video here in the hydrogenation process. Yeah, please watch a video.
Olive oil contains a high proportion of unsaturated fats. Let's try to carry out a reaction to harden these fats. The reaction requires the presence of a catalyst, which can be nickel, platinum, or palladium. We will use nickel. pass hydrogen through the olive oil in the presence of the catalyst. The olive oil gradually changes its physical state. It solidifies and becomes a saturated fat.
Yeah, okay. This is called a conversion of a unsaturated fatty acids to the saturated fatty acids. Okay, nothing but a solidification of oil or a hardening of oil or simply hydrogenation of oil. Okay, this is regarding with the oil industry. So since we are completed with part A also in the second unit, the next we will start about the soaps, glycerin and detergents. Okay, we'll start in the next class. Okay, whatever the presentations you can give me the unit 1 presentations today. Yeah, who is going to present today? Unit 1, any topic? Today I will share you with a PPT. Yeah, please come voluntarily. Every time I'm just repeating the same thing. You just please come voluntarily. I will give a maximum marks. Just to test your skills, how you are improving your presentation skills or not. Okay, these are very much required these days. Yeah, who is coming?
Sir, me Hamkishri, rule number 6.
Yeah, okay, please carry on. Which topic you are going to present?
Uranium conversion, sir.
Wow, yeah, nice topic. Okay, from here you will explain what is uranium or just directly process?
Like directly process, sir. Next one. In that only points are there. No, sir. Yes, sir. This.
Okay, yeah, carry on.
It's okay, sir. Uranium conversion. In this process, uranium nitrous hexahydrate, which is taken from the solvent extraction purification process, is sent to the denitration process for separating NO and NO2 from HNO3, and then uranium trioxide is sent to the reduction process. In that UO2, which is taken for fuel element preparation, it undergoes two different reactions: hydrofluorination and carbide furnace. In hydrofluorination, uranium tetrafluoride in that first part will undergo fused salt process, and left one with undergo reduction. In this it forms metal fuel element fabrication, and some which is UF4, which is fused for the salt process to undergo fluorination. In this, the UF4, wait, sir, it is gone. In this UF6, in UF6 it forms gas diffusion plant, or UF3 and U235 enrichment. And in the carbide furnacing, CO2 gas and CO are released, and carbide for fuel element fabrication. U6 and CY carbides are for fuel fabrication element. And then, and as the reactions to, sir, that's it, sir.
Okay. Yeah, first you have to be clear that this is uranyl nitrate. This is this is yellow color, which is
Yes,
uranyl
sir.
nitrate. Okay, then this is uranium trioxide. uranium dioxide. UO2 is uranium dioxide. Hydrogen fluoride.
Dioxide.
Yeah,
Yes,
dioxide,
sir.
trioxide, hydrogen fluoride, and uranium fluoride. This is uranium fluoride, not tetrafluoride. Uranium fluoride. Then this is uranium hexafluoride. Okay, this is calcium
Hexa.
fluoride. This is hexa. UF6 is hexa.
Mm.
This is uranium carbide. Okay, this is calcium fluoride, CaF2. Okay, this is carbon monoxide. You already know that one. UC2 uranium carbide. This
Yes,
is
sir.
okay. Just be vigilant in that one. So what is UO3, UO2, UHF, UFO, UF6? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
okay.
sir.
Your presentation is nice. You have selected a somewhat tough topic
Thank
compared to others. Yeah. The next who is going to
thank you,
present?
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, me, sir, I will tell about explosives and propellants, sir.
Explosives.
And propellants.
Okay, let's okay. The whole topic.
No, sir, I separately prepared on propellants, sir.
Separately prepared means you are presenting.
No, sir, I didn't present. I have little notes, sir, about propellants. I will
Okay.
tell about the chemical decompositions and all that.
Okay, you don't want slides. You will just say whatever you want. Am I right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. Carry on. No problem.
Hello, good morning, guys. I'm Isaac. I want to tell you about propellants today. So I already did a course on this propellants. So this propellants is very exciting because you have to know about every reaction, its equilibrium and its reaction in that fuel chamber. So I want to discuss about propellant properties. When we talk about propellant properties, if I want to classify the propellants. The first one could be like fuel type. It's like it's natural oil, and second type is polymers, and next one is um, next one is like it's an hybrid one. So if I want to tell, it is like solid, liquid, hybrid. Three types of propellants we have. So when we talk about solid propellants, we can take an example as nitrocellulose, nitroglycerin. Yes, nitroglycerin is also taken as an explosive. It has a very high amount of energy that can release with a fraction of seconds. So it is very high explosive. So we use nitroglycerin in the presence of any oxidizer. So it's like it will burn more than itself. So with the combination of nitroglycerin and nitrocellulose, the solid propellant will have a major impact. But the energy losses, when we consider the flame is on all fuel chambers, so energy losses is very high. If we can classify the solid propellants into two types: homogeneous propellants and heterogeneous propellants. Like if I have to say about homogeneous propellants, it's like only just a chemical and an oxidizer. But if I speak about heterogeneous propellants, it's like I built a case on it. So in that composite, an oxidizer will be as an portion. So it's called as an heterogeneous propellants. And another I was telling about oxidizers. So an example of an oxidizer would be ammonium perchlorate. It readily gives oxygen atoms and all that. And next, coming to some of the burning components, when we consider, uh, we can use carbon fuels. We can take alkanes and any of them. But it is like when I talk about organic fuels, it is some examples are acrylic acid, acrylonitrile. It has very high energy. It can release in a fraction of seconds. And another example would be PBAN. It is highly used by ISRO rockets. In ISRO rockets, it is called as sorry, it's called as hydroxypolybutadiene. And when we come into liquid propellants, mostly alcohols, power alcohols. We heard of power alcohols in high-end class car engines. When we use alcohol, the energy is stored in such a way that when it is oxidized with a pure oxygen or some kind of oxidus, it can it's like uh, we can control the burning rate, and we have to consider flash points and fire points when we use um, it's when we use liquid propellants. And next, coming to hybrid propellants, as we know that in before unit, we talked about nuclear energy. So we can use that nuclear energy for this kind of rockets, but it depends. It is a very complicated process. It depends on how we handle the radioactive metal, how we handle the waste coming from the nuclear fueled rockets. So when we talk more about propellant, we can say that um, electric rockets can also be come to display, but it takes a lot of research. So not electric rockets are not at all explainable on the theory, which research is still going on. So I would like to complete. I would like to complete my topic on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice topic, sir. Yeah, you are doing that ISRO course, I guess.
No, sir. Last NPTEL rocket propulsion I did, sir.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Some ISRO course also you registered, I guess.
Yes, sir. I did, sir.
That is
What about that?
that is
What's
on the topic of geoinformatics.
Applications
GIS,
of
yes.
geospatial arrangements in economic diversity.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I also done the topic geo information something. Yeah, yesterday I got
Yes, sir.
Studying the
certificate.
applications
Did
on
yesterday. Yes, yes.
Sir.
It was nice. Course was nice and certificate also nicely
Did you
designed.
get certificate, sir?
Yes, yesterday I got.
Okay,
That's
sir.
for university teachers. That course is for
Sir,
university
only for
teachers.
faculty, yes, sir.
Yeah, faculty and government officials. So I did that one. July 1st is was completed. So I have given the exam also. Then yesterday they have given the certificate. Yeah, it was nice. So just go for some certification courses. I will like to suggest that everyone please go for some certificate courses. Apart from this BSc degree, you also need many skills. So yesterday I have just posted the NPC, National Productivity Council. That is a government of India organization. It's really very good organization. You should go for certification courses. Obviously, you know that industrial safety is very, very, very much important topic. When you do such type of courses, two to three certification courses, industry to absorb you in the industry, it is very easy for the management to decide that yes, you are the right and suitable candidate for the particular organization as a safety manager. Okay, you will directly promoted to the safety manager, from the trainee to the safety manager within 1 or 2 years. Otherwise, within just you when you are taking only BSc degree, then they have to think in which sector you are suitable, whether you are suitable for the production, whether you are suitable for the safety, whether you are suitable for some other laboratory work, something. When you did some of the courses like Isaac and this Ravi, they are doing the ISRO courses. Then ISRO will also release every year ISRO VSSC Thiruvananthapuram and SDSC Shar. They will every year VSSC will release two notifications for diploma in chemical engineering or BSc in chemistry. Okay, you can apply for those. When you are applying for those jobs, the doing these certification courses, this type of certification courses is very much advantageous. You will have a excess weightage compared to other candidates. In your according to your resume, they will find you more suitable candidate. Otherwise, see in the heavy board production industry. Okay, nothing but a heavy water production. Heavy board production industry will also release the notification every year twice. Okay, twice you can apply for that also. Then in every industry, whether it may be a private sector industry, whether it may be a PSU public sector undertakings, whether it may be a completely a hardcore central government or a state government industry, Okay, any industry need a what we call the safety. Safety is a necessary aspect. So doing the safety courses is very much important. In the next semester, I think you will choose a elective like industrial safety. Our HOD madam will teach you. So just do this type of courses. It is just costing 1180 something, but the certification will carry a value because you are spending 1180 rupees means that certificate is you are getting from Government of India organization. Means you will gain a huge knowledge and certificate will add a value to your CV or a resume, whatever you prepare after you gaining in the knowledge. Okay, these type of certifications are very much helpful. Just go for it. We just my request once more is just respond in the WhatsApp group. At least you are taking the advice, or at least you are rejecting the advice. We are not even knowing that one. So HOD madam is also confusing whether you are taking advice or not. You just try to respond in the WhatsApp group. Also be active. And next one, who is going to present? 17, number 17. You already said today you
It's
will
not,
present.
sir. It's
Okay,
not
he's
there.
not there. Okay, next one, who is going to present? 34. Yeah. Please go on. Which topic you want to present?
Components of nuclear fission reactors.
Sorry. Voice was not clear.
Important components of nuclear fission reactors.
Yeah. Nuclear components. Okay. Good topic. Everybody apart from fission and fusion. Today everybody is selecting a tough choice. Okay, I appreciate. Yeah, you can go ahead.
These reactors are of 4 types. First one, fuels. Second, structural components. Third one, coolants to remove liberated energy. Fourth one, moderators. In this, fuels are divided into 2 types: fission fuels and fertile fuels. Fission fuels are the elements which such as oxides, carbides, nitrates, sulfates of uranium. Next, fertile fuels are the atomic elements which by undergoing nuclear reaction gives fission fuels. These fuels include uranium and thorium. This fission fuel reaction is uranium 238, which gives neptunium 239 plus electrons plus VE, which stands for electron anti-neutrino, which gives plutonium 239 plus electrons plus VE. And second one is structural components. The reactors are the components which involves the material with lower absorption of neutrons like zirconium, aluminum, and stainless steel. And third one is covalents to remove liberated heat. Uh, the nuclear reaction, which has huge amount of energy, will be released. The covalents like sodium, potassium alloy, bismuth, purified water, deuterium oxide are used in coolants to remove liberated heat. And last one is moderators, the materials which are required to observe neutrons to take place or near the environmental temperature of reactors. Uh, the moderator neutrons are by non-observation type collisions with moderating materials like pure graphite, D2O, heavy water and beryllium are the environmental temperatures for moderators. That's it, sir. Sir, sir,
What happened, sir?
Power gone.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir, sir, your audio is not
Okay,
audible, sir.
yeah, here heavy rains are there, so my network gone. I'm connecting with mobile. Okay, no problem. We will conclude the class. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Here, Isaac, can you please give me the attendance?
Yes, sir, I will.
Download mobile, I guess. Yeah, I couldn't download it from my mobile. Okay, just give me the attendance and stop my recording, earlier recording. There is no option of stopping recording with
I
mobile.
can stop your recording, sir, because it is your right now, sir. Recording won't stop, sir.